There was a time when 40 days of fear silenced an entire army.
40 mornings, 40 afternoons, and the same voice. Deep, mocking.
Who is this God of yours who cannot send a man to face me? Echoing through the valley like thunder. Soldiers retreated. The king trembled.
And then, on a day like any other, a boy went down to the stream.
He chose 5 smooth stones
And walked toward the giant. His name was David.
In the fields of Bethlehem, where the wind carried the scent of wet earth and the sun painted the hills golden at dusk, there was a boy no one noticed. His name was David, son of Jesse, the youngest of 8 brothers. While the other men of the house spoke of wars and alliances, of politics and power, he was far away, alone, tending sheep that did not belong to him, but to his father. It was the humblest work in the family, the one no one wanted, the one left for whoever had no voice in important decisions. But David did not complain. There was something in those fields that transformed him. The silence of the early mornings, the starry sky that seemed so close he could touch it, the presence of something greater that he could not explain, but felt in every fiber of his being. And it was there, among sheep and stones, that David learned to talk with God, not with memorized words, not with empty rituals, but with an open soul, like someone speaking to a friend who knows every thought before it is even uttered. The nights in the wilderness were dangerous. Lions lurked in the shadows. Bears came down from the mountains, hungry, and David, still a teenager, faced them all, not by his own courage, but because he understood something few understood. The sheep were not his. They belonged to his father, and he was merely the guardian. If one got lost, he would go after it. If one was attacked, he would fight to the death to protect it. One night, a lion charged the flock. David heard the desperate bleating of a sheep and ran. His bare feet pounded against the stones as his heart hammered in his chest. He saw the beast, yellow eyes gleaming in the darkness, claws sunk into the body of the defenseless animal. David did not think. He grabbed the lion by its mane, felt the hot breath of the beast on his face, and with a strength that was not his own, he broke the predator's jaw. The sheep was saved, and David understood that night that the God who protected him in the darkness was the same one who ruled the stars. But what would come next would change everything. In Israel, King Saul had lost God's favor. His disobedience brought consequences he himself did not fully comprehend. The Spirit of the Lord departed from him, and in its place came a darkness that consumed him from within. Fits of anguish, paranoia, a sadness no counselor could cure. Meanwhile, in Ramah, the prophet Samuel wept. He wept for the king who could have been. He wept for Israel. He wept because he knew God had rejected Saul, but had not yet revealed who would be the next anointed. Until the voice of the Lord broke the silence. How long will you mourn for Saul? Fill a horn with oil and go. I am sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem. I have chosen a king among his sons. Samuel obeyed. He arrived in Bethlehem with a heavy heart, not knowing exactly what he would find. Jesse gathered his sons, 7 strong men, tall, imposing. Samuel looked at Eliab, the firstborn, and thought surely this was the chosen one, but God whispered in his heart, "Do not look at his appearance or his height. I have rejected him. The Lord does not see as man sees. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." One by one, Jesse's sons passed before Samuel, and one by one God said no. Samuel frowned. "Are these all your sons?" Jesse hesitated. "There is still the youngest. He is tending the sheep." Samuel felt his heart race. "Send for him. We will not sit down until he arrives." David appeared with the smell of the field still on his skin, his reddish hair disheveled, his eyes shining with a mixture of curiosity and innocence. He was just a boy, but when Samuel saw him, the voice of God thundered in his soul. "This is the one, rise and anoint him." The oil flowed down, David's head. It ran down his forehead, down his cheeks. And in that moment something changed forever. The Spirit of the Lord came upon David with power. He did not fully understand what had happened. He did not know that one day he would sit on the throne of Israel. He did not know that his lineage would produce the Messiah. He only knew that something inside him had awakened, and that he would never be the same again. The days dragged on like wounds that never heal. David returned to the fields, the sheep, the solitude. But now there was a flame in his chest that would not go out, and it was precisely his skill with the harp that opened the doors of the palace. Saul, tormented by spirits of anguish, needed someone to bring peace to his troubled soul. The servants remembered a young man from Bethlehem who played like no other. David was summoned. When his fingers touched the strings for the first time before the king, something happened. The music rose like incense. The notes danced in the air, and Saul felt the darkness retreat. For a moment, there was peace. David became part of the court. He played for the king. He learned about politics, war, intrigue. He observed everything with attentive eyes. But he never forgot where he came from. He never forgot the nights under the stars. He never forgot the God who had anointed him in secret. And then it happened. The Philistines gathered their armies for war. They camped between Soko and Azekah at a place called Ephes Damim. On the other side of the Valley of Elah, Saul positioned the troops of Israel, 2 armies, 2 mountains, and between them a valley that would become the stage for the most famous confrontation in history. From the Philistine camp emerged a man, but to call him a man was almost an insult to his size. Goliath of Gath stood nearly 10 feet tall. He wore a bronze helmet that gleamed in the sun. His coat of scale armor weighed 130 pounds. On his legs, bronze greaves. On his shoulders, a javelin that looked like a tree torn from the ground. The iron point of his spear weighed more than 15 pounds. Before him, a shield-bearer carried an enormous shield, as if protecting not a man, but a walking fortress. Silence. Goliath stopped in the middle of the valley. His voice echoed through the mountains like the roar of thunder. "Why do you come out to draw up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and you servants of Saul? Choose a man to fight me. If he can kill me, we will be your slaves. But if I kill him, you will be our slaves." The soldiers of Israel retreated. No one dared breathe too loudly. King Saul himself, who was the tallest man in Israel, trembled before that challenge. And so it went for 40 days, 40 mornings, when Goliath came down to the valley and issued his challenge. 40 evenings when the Israelites fled to their tents, humiliated. Fear had become a prison, and no one could find the key. Meanwhile, David was in Bethlehem, again tending his father's sheep. His 3 older brothers were in the camp, serving in Saul's army. One day, Jesse called David, "Take this grain and these loaves of bread to your brothers, and take these cheeses to the commander. See how they are doing, and bring back news." David left at dawn. He left the sheep with a keeper and ran to the Valley of Elah. He arrived at the camp at the exact moment when the army was going out to its battle positions. The war cry echoed through the air. David felt the blood pulsing in his veins. He left the provisions with the keeper of supplies and ran to find his brothers. While he was talking with them, he heard something that made his heart stop. The voice of Goliath. The giant came up from the Philistine camp and issued his usual challenge. David watched the soldiers of Israel retreating. He saw the terror stamped on their faces, and he felt something different from what everyone else felt. It was not fear, it was indignation. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? The words left his mouth before he could stop them. The soldiers around him looked at him as if he had gone mad. Eliab, his oldest brother, heard, and anger overtook him. "What are you doing here? With whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your arrogance and the wickedness of your heart. You came only to watch the battle." David was not deterred. "What have I done now? Can I not even ask?" He turned away from his brother and continued questioning the soldiers about Goliath's challenge. The words spread through the camp until they reached Saul's ears. The king sent for him. David entered the royal tent. His eyes met Saul's, and with a confidence that did not match his age, he spoke the words no one expected. "Let no one's heart fail because of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him." Saul almost laughed. "You cannot fight this Philistine. You are only a boy, and he has been a warrior since his youth." But David did not back down. "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I grabbed it by the mane, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." Saul looked at the boy before him. Something in those eyes made him believe. "Go, and may the Lord be with you." If this story is touching your heart, subscribe now and turn on notifications. Here, every narrative is a journey through the sacred pages. And what comes next in David's story will take your breath away and make your heart beat faster. The king tried to dress David in his own armor. He placed a bronze helmet on his head. He dressed him in a coat of armor. David tried to walk, but the weight was too much. "I cannot walk in these. I am not used to them." He took it all off. He picked up his shepherd's staff. He went down to the stream that cut through the valley. The icy water flowed between the stones. David crouched down. His fingers searched the stream bed. One stone, smooth, perfect. Then another, and another. 5 stones in all. He put them in his shepherd's bag. He held his sling in his hand and began to walk toward the giant. Goliath saw the boy approaching. At first he did not believe it. Then he felt insulted. "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?" And he cursed David by his gods. "Come here, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field." David did not tremble. His voice echoed through the valley with an authority that did not come from him. "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. This day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds of the air and the beasts of the earth. And the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel, and all who are gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves. For the battle belongs to the Lord, and he will give all of you into our hands." Goliath advanced. David ran toward him. He did not retreat. He did not hesitate. As he ran, his hand plunged into the bag. He grabbed a stone. He placed it in the sling. He swung it once, twice. The sound of the leather cutting through the air echoed through the valley, and then he released. The stone flew, invisible, deadly. It struck Goliath exactly in the forehead, in the only exposed spot between the helmet and the face. The stone sank into the giant's skull. Goliath stopped. His eyes went wide, and then, like a tower collapsing, he fell face first to the ground. The impact made the earth tremble. No one breathed. David ran to the fallen body. He had no sword. He drew Goliath's own sword from its sheath. It was heavy, enormous, but he lifted it, and with a single stroke he cut off the giant's head. He held it up by the hair. Blood ran down the shepherd boy's arm, and the Valley of Elah erupted in shouts. The Philistines, seeing their champion dead, panicked. They ran, they fled, and Israel pursued them to the gates of Gath and Ekron. The bodies of the Philistines covered the road. The victory was total, and David, the boy no one noticed, became the hero of an entire nation. But the peace would not last. Saul brought David to the court. The young man never returned to his father's house. He became the companion of Jonathan, the king's son. The friendship between them was born instantly, deep. Jonathan looked at David and saw something that transcended ordinary admiration. He saw a brother. He took off his own robe and gave it to David. He gave him his tunic, his sword, his bow, his belt, and he made a covenant with him, a bond of souls that not even death could break. David succeeded in everything he did. Saul put him in command of his warriors, and the people of Israel began to sing in the streets. Saul has slain his thousands, David his tens of thousands. And that was the moment everything fell apart. Envy entered Saul's heart like a venomous serpent. He heard the women's songs and rage consumed him. They credit David with tens of thousands, and me with only thousands. All he needs is the kingdom. From that day on, Saul looked at David with suspicion. The evil spirit that tormented him returned with redoubled force. While David played the harp to calm him, Saul gripped a spear and hurled it. David dodged. The spear buried itself in the wall behind him once, then again. Saul tried to kill him twice that same day. David realized he could no longer stay. The man who had welcomed him now wanted his blood. The years that followed were years of flight. David became a fugitive in his own land. He ran to the priests at Nob, then to Gath among the Philistines, where he feigned madness to escape with his life. He took refuge in the cave of Adullam, a hideout of cold stone in the mountains of Judah, and there something unexpected happened. The rejected began to arrive, the indebted, the embittered, those who had nothing left to lose. 400 men joined David, then 600. He became the leader not of a royal army but of a band of desperate men. And with them he learned lessons no palace could teach. Saul hunted him relentlessly. He took 3,000 chosen soldiers to search every mountain, every cave, every hiding place. More than once, David had the opportunity to kill the king. In the cave at En-Gedi, Saul entered alone to relieve himself. David was hiding in the depths of the same cave. His men whispered, "This is the day the Lord delivers your enemy into your hands." David approached in silence. His heart pounded. He could have driven his sword into Saul's back. He could have ended years of suffering with a single blow, but he did not. He only cut off the corner of the king's robe, and afterward his heart was troubled even by that. "The Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my master, the Lord's anointed." He would not raise his hand against the one God had chosen, even though that man wanted him dead. David shouted to Saul from the top of the mountain. He showed the piece of the robe. "Look, my father, I could have killed you, but I did not." Saul wept. He acknowledged that David was more righteous than he. But the truce was short-lived. The demon of envy did not rest, and the pursuit continued. The days of peace were numbered. The Philistines marched against Israel once more, and this time the battle took place on Mount Gilboa. Saul, desperate, consulted a medium at Endor, going against everything he himself had commanded. The spirit of Samuel appeared with a terrible message. "Tomorrow you and your sons will be with me." The battle was a massacre. Saul's sons fell first. Jonathan, the friend David loved more than his own life, fell pierced by arrows. Saul, gravely wounded, asked his armor-bearer to kill him so he would not fall alive into the hands of his enemies. The armor-bearer refused. So Saul fell on his own sword. The king of Israel was dead. David received the news in Ziklag. An Amalekite messenger ran to him, bringing Saul's crown and bracelet. He expected a reward. He found death. David asked, "Were you not afraid to lift your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed?" And he ordered his execution. Then he tore his clothes. He wept, he fasted, and he composed a lament that would echo through generations. How the mighty have fallen. Jonathan, my brother, your love for me was more wonderful than the love of women. How the mighty have fallen. Even after everything, David did not rejoice at Saul's death. His heart was shattered. He had lost a king and a brother on the same day. And then finally the time came. David inquired of the Lord, "Shall I go up to one of the towns of Judah?" And God answered, "Go up, go to Hebron." There the men of Judah anointed David as king. He was 30 years old, but Israel was still divided. Ishbosheth, son of Saul, was proclaimed king over the other tribes. For 7 years there was war between the two houses. Blood spilled, betrayals, political assassinations, until Ishbosheth was killed by his own officers. The tribes of Israel came to Hebron. They bowed before David, and they anointed him king over the entire nation. The promise made in the fields of Bethlehem, when Samuel poured oil on the head of a shepherd boy, was finally fulfilled. David was king of Israel, but what would come next would test everything he was. David captured Jerusalem from the Jebusites. He made it the capital of the kingdom, the city of David. He built a palace. He defeated the Philistines repeatedly. He expanded the borders of Israel as never before. He brought the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem with dancing and celebration. He took off his royal robe and danced before the Lord with all his might, wearing only a linen garment. Michal, his wife, daughter of Saul, despised him for it. But David did not care. He was dancing for God, not for men. His heart overflowed with gratitude. The shepherd of sheep was now the shepherd of a nation, and Israel lived its days of greatest glory. But glory is dangerous. One spring evening, at the time when kings go off to war, David stayed in Jerusalem. He sent Joab and the army to fight the Ammonites. He stayed behind, and in that seemingly small decision, he planted the seed of his greatest destruction. Restless, David walked on the rooftop of the palace at dusk. His eyes wandered over the city below, and then he saw her, a woman bathing, very beautiful. David did not look away. He did not go back inside. He sent someone to find out who she was. The answer should have been enough to make him stop. She is Bathsheba, daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite, married, the wife of one of his most loyal soldiers. But David did not stop. He sent for her, and he slept with her. Silence. Weeks later, a message arrived at the palace. 2 words that destroyed worlds. "I am pregnant." David panicked. He tried to cover up the sin. He summoned Uriah from the battlefield. He pretended to want news of the war. Then he told the soldier to go home and rest. If Uriah slept with his wife, everyone would think the child was his. But Uriah was too honorable. He slept at the entrance of the palace with the other servants. David asked why the ark and Israel and Judah are staying. Judah, intense. My lord Joab and my lord's men are camped in the open country. How could I go to my home to eat and drink and make love to my wife? As surely as you live, I will not do such a thing. David tried again. He invited Uriah to eat and drink with him. He got him drunk. But even drunk, Uriah did not go home. His loyalty was unshakable, and it was that very loyalty that signed his death warrant. David wrote a letter to Joab. He placed the letter in Uriah's own hand. Put Uriah at the front of the fiercest battle. Then withdraw, so that he will be struck down and die. Joab obeyed. Uriah was placed near the wall of the city. The enemies shot. Uriah fell. And the most loyal man in David's army died by order of his own king. The news reached David with calculated coldness. "Your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead too." David responded as if nothing had happened. "The sword devours one as well as another. Press your attack against the city." After Bathsheba finished the period of mourning, David sent for her. She became his wife, and she gave him a son. The perfect crime, the secret buried. No one knew, no one would ask. But God had seen everything. The prophet Nathan entered the palace. He told a story to the king. There were two men in a certain town, one rich, the other poor. The rich man had many sheep and cattle. The poor man had only one little lamb. He raised it as a daughter. It ate from his bread, drank from his cup, slept in his arms. A traveler came to the rich man's house. Instead of taking one of his many sheep to prepare a meal, he took the poor man's lamb and killed it. David's anger exploded. "As surely as the Lord lives, the man who did this deserves to die. He must pay 4 times the value of the lamb, because he did this and showed no mercy." Nathan looked into the king's eyes. "You are the man." The words pierced David like a sword. Nathan continued, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I anointed you king over Israel and delivered you from the hand of Saul. I gave your master's house to you and your master's wives into your arms. I gave you Israel and Judah. And if all this had been too little, I would have given you much more. Why did you despise the word of the Lord by doing what is evil in his eyes? You struck down Uriah the Hittite with the sword and took his wife to be your own. Now the sword will never depart from your house." David did not defend himself. He did not blame others. He did not make excuses. His voice came out broken. "I have sinned against the Lord." Nathan replied, "The Lord has taken away your sin. You will not die. But because by doing this you have shown utter contempt for the Lord, the son born to you will die." The child became ill. David fasted. He prayed. He lay prostrate on the ground for 7 days. He did not eat. He did not drink. He pleaded with God for the child's life. But on the 7th day, the child died. The servants were afraid to tell him. David perceived it from their whispers. He got up from the ground. He washed himself. He changed his clothes. He went to the house of the Lord and worshipped. Then he went home and ate. The servants did not understand, David explained. "While the child was alive, I fasted and wept because I thought perhaps the Lord would have mercy on me and let him live. But now that he is dead, why should I fast? Can I bring him back? I will go to him, but he will not return to me." The consequences of David's sin were only beginning. Amnon, David's oldest son, fell in love with his own half-sister Tamar. He pretended to be ill. He asked her to come serve him, and when they were alone, he raped her. Afterward, consumed by a revulsion even greater than his passion, he threw her out of his house. Tamar was destroyed. Absalom, her brother, found out what had happened, and he kept hatred in his heart for 2 years. He waited, he planned, and then, at a sheep-shearing festival, he ordered his servants to kill Amnon. The sword would not depart from David's house. Nathan's prophecy was being fulfilled before his eyes. Absalom fled to Geshur and stayed there for 3 years. David missed his son but could not see him. When Absalom finally returned, David refused to receive him for another 2 years. And in that void of affection, something dangerous grew. Absalom began to steal the hearts of the people. He woke early. He stood by the city gate. When anyone came to seek justice from the king, Absalom intercepted them. "Your claims are valid, but there is no one designated by the king to hear you. If only I were the judge of this land, everyone could come to me and I would give them justice." And when people bowed before him, Absalom lifted them up and kissed them. Little by little, the handsome and charismatic prince won the loyalty that belonged to his father. And then came the coup. Absalom went to Hebron under the pretense of fulfilling a vow, but from there he sent messengers throughout Israel. When you hear the sound of the trumpets, say that Absalom reigns in Hebron. The conspiracy grew. The counselor Ahithophel, one of the wisest men in Israel, joined Absalom. The number of followers increased rapidly. A messenger ran to David. The hearts of the men of Israel are with Absalom. David felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. There was no time for defense. There was no time for negotiation. Get up, we must flee, otherwise none of us will escape from Absalom. The king who had defeated Goliath, who had conquered nations, fled from Jerusalem barefoot, with his head covered, weeping as he climbed the Mount of Olives. Civil war divided Israel. David organized his forces on the other side of the Jordan. He divided the army into 3 groups under Joab, Abishai, and Ittai. He wanted to go personally into battle, but his men refused. You are worth 10,000 of us. It is better that you stay in the city to support us. David agreed, but he gave a clear order to all the commanders. For my sake, deal gently with the young man Absalom. The entire army heard. The battle took place in the forest of Ephraim. Absalom's men were defeated. 20,000 died that day. The dense forest consumed more lives than the sword. Absalom, riding on his mule, encountered David's men. As he passed under the branches of a large oak tree, his head got caught in the branches. The mule kept going, and Absalom was left hanging between heaven and earth. A soldier saw it and told Joab, "Why did you not strike him down right there?" The man answered, "Even if you put 1,000 pieces of silver in my hand, I would not lay a hand on the king's son." We all heard the king's order. Joab had no such scruples. He took 3 javelins and thrust them into Absalom's heart while he was still alive, hanging from the oak. 10 armor-bearers surrounded the body and finished the execution. The rebel prince was dead. David waited by the city gate. A watchman spotted a messenger running, then another. The first arrived. With news of victory, David asked only one question: "Is the young man Absalom safe?" The messenger hesitated. The second arrived. "Good news, my lord? The Lord has vindicated you today against all who rose up against you," David asked again. "Is the young man Absalom safe?" The messenger answered, "May all the enemies of the king share the fate of that young man." David understood. He went up to the room over the gateway, and as he climbed, his lament echoed off the stone walls. "My son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died instead of you. Absalom, my son, my son." The king who had conquered kingdoms wept like a child. Victory tasted of ashes. He had defeated the enemy, but the enemy was his own flesh and blood, and no crown, no throne, no glory could fill the void Absalom left behind. David returned to Jerusalem. He reigned for several more years. He faced other rebellions. He made other mistakes, like the census that brought plague upon Israel. But he was never the same. The man who had danced before the ark now carried scars that would never fade. When death approached, he summoned Solomon, the son he had with Bathsheba after the tragedy. He gave him instructions, warnings, and he died in peace after reigning 40 years over Israel, 7 in Hebron and 33 in Jerusalem. David was not a perfect hero. He was a man who loved deeply and failed terribly, who built altars and dug abysses, who knew the glory of the throne and the solitude of the inner desert. Perhaps you see yourself in him. Perhaps you have already faced giants and still fallen before temptations that seemed small. Perhaps you carry scars from choices that made your life bleed. The question is not whether you will fail. Everyone fails. The question is what you will do after the fall. The God of David was not looking for perfection. He was looking for a heart that, even when broken, still beat toward him. David was called a man after God's own heart, not because he never sinned, but because even at the bottom of the pit, he never let go of the Creator's hand. His repentance was as deep as his sin, his tears as real as his conquests. And that is why 3,000 years later, we still speak of him. We still sing his psalms. We still learn from his life, because David shows us that there is no fall from which God cannot lift us. There is no night so dark that his light cannot break through. And there is no heart so broken that his hands cannot rebuild. If this story touched your heart, write in the comments, "I want a heart after God's own."